Good lord. Is this not ridiculous to anyone else? We are on the 9th generation of consoles. 9th. And one of the biggest hangups I have to deal with is that 667 gigabytes of usable default storage all of a sudden isn't that much. Go back a couple of decades and I'm 90% sure I could fit the entire GameCube lineup on 667 gigabytes. Yet in 2024, I get to download Red Dead Redemption 2, FIFA 23, the Call of Duty HQ hub thing or whatever it is, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, and the Demon's Souls remake. 5 whole games. And the thought that I'd want to add Elden Ring on top of this means I'll only have 7 free gigabytes of space to, I don't know, play Bomb Rush Cyberpunk or Balatro. I don't know. If I want to play Skyrim, I'll have to uninstall one of these games, or I'm encouraged to spend an extra $90 on a special edition storage upgrade so that I won't have to worry about this issue. I can't even rely on game discs anymore because some of them are straight up just keys for a digital download nowadays, which can only make me feel a certain type of way for deciding to spend an extra $100 on a disk drive. Also, just to preface this video, while doing research for all of the file sizes for these games, not only are there discrepancies between PC and consoles for the same game, but some people just have varying install sizes. I know some games are updated after the fact to optimize storage. Otherwise, I don't know. I saw nearly 10 different accurate file sizes for just one game, and I can only imagine why. So if I happen to get the exact gigabyte number of a game wrong, apologies. Just imagine some of the numbers I say are generally close. Anyways, it's not like I'm exactly breaking ground by talking about this. It's no secret that the file sizes for certain AAA games are absolutely massive now. Nearly every other month, you see a brand new headline for an article by PC Gamer, Kotaku, or IGN talking about how the next Call of Duty or the next big AAA game set to come out is some absurd number of gigabytes. And everyone can tell it's absurd to the point that it is a real, genuine conspiracy. Big developers like Activision are purposely bloating the sizes of their live service games so you're less likely to free up space on your drive to play something else. At a certain point, I can't even blame them because here's Modern Warfare 2019 and here's Modern Warfare 3 2023. On the left is a 159 gigabyte game, on the right is a 240 gigabyte game. 81 gigabytes of difference. You're probably wondering how any of this possibly came to happen, and to answer that, we need to back up a bit further, a little bit. Whoa, okay, too far, forward. Okay, perfect. 1996. Let's take a look at the size of some N64 games, because when this console came out, these cartridges could hold up to a maximum of 64 megabytes of data. Some games, like Dr. Mario 64, were put on carts that could only hold 4 megabytes of data, which, looking at gameplay of this, yeah, that tracks. Some other games were bigger, like Super Mario 64 coming in at 6 megabytes, or Star Fox 64 at 10 megabytes. Only a few games were actually put on the 64 megabyte carts, like Conker's Bad Fur Day, Paper Mario, Pokemon Stadium 2, and Resident Evil 2. Jumping forward just 5 years, the GameCube comes out and introduces its own specialized format of mini DVDs that can hold about 1.5 gigabytes of data. Star Fox Assault comes in at a whopping 1.3 gigabytes in size, and Super Mario Sunshine comes in at 1.35 gigabytes in size. For the Star Fox franchise, that's a 129 times increase in file size in just 5 years. And for the Mario franchise, it's an even larger 224 times increase in size, which sounds absurd because it is. Taking a look at it visually really puts it into perspective, with each dot representing 1 megabyte. Super Mario 64 is 6 megabytes and Super Mario Sunshine is 1,350 megabytes. The rate of change we're working with here is like if Red Dead Redemption 2 came out in 2018 and people were shocked about a 150 gigabyte file size, then 5 years later Red Dead Redemption 3 came out and was 33 terabytes. Absurdity aside, the difference in file size is readily apparent in the jump from 64 to Sunshine by just looking at the game. Look at the models, textures, just how spacious these maps are. Hell, look at how good these cutscenes look. For 2002, this is a beautiful game, and compared to its predecessor, is a breathtaking leap in graphical quality. But it's those breathtaking graphics and textures that are the main culprit behind what we now consider to be bloat. Just like previous graphics generations, we've continued to strive for a noticeable leap in quality. The same way we jumped from 32-bit to 3D, or from the N64 or Dreamcast to the PS2 or GameCube. No, but like really though, look at the staggering difference in quality for CG cutscenes from Final Fantasy VII to Final Fantasy X. If I was old enough to comprehend what a Final Fantasy was back then, I would have thought these graphics were lifelike. These graphics are the result of higher quality models, textures, and sometimes even pre-rendered videos, which take up the majority of a game's file size. Super Mario Sunshine might be 224 times bigger than Super Mario 64, but 874 megabytes of Super Mario Sunshine's disk space is dedicated solely to pre-rendered cutscenes. 2/3 of the game's size spent on 14 minutes of videos, meaning that without those videos, Sunshine goes from 224 times bigger to just 79 times bigger. This same reasoning holds true for today's largest games. Red Dead Redemption 2 sits at such a large file size because the game is packed to the brim with high quality textures, audio, models, etc. Think about every person you meet, every animal, the foliage, the buildings, and everything in them, all the clothing in the game, or every little detail that went into every interaction in this game. All of these are models with the highest quality textures Rockstar could use at the time wrapped around them in a game with one of the most expansive and detailed open worlds ever. Articles were made about this game talking about how it was a once-in-a-generation technological achievement. When I now say that this game is 120 gigabytes on PC or 150 gigabytes on console, it starts to make a lot more sense. But what about a game that we know for a fact isn't a technological achievement? Call of Duty MW3 is such a uniquely stupid situation that I almost feel it's like whatever the impressively opposite thing is of a once-in-a-generation technological achievement. From what we know about MW 2023's development, the game was planned to be DLC for Modern Warfare 2022, and was then turned into a full game. This isn't unheard of. It happened with Halo 3 ODST, Assassin's Creed Mirage, Hollow Knight Silksong. It's just that unlike those games, especially Silksong, MW3 was made into a full game in just 16 months. It is so obviously slapped together that the main reason the game's file size is so big is because it depends on you installing MW2 alongside it. Not to mention COD as a franchise is poisoned by the idea that it needs to be a huge, mind-blowing graphical showcase each time a new one comes out. So much so that we've reached the point that this gun on screen is probably the same file size as the release version of Skyrim. Times that thinking by the 114 different guns in MW3, and suddenly it's no real wonder why the game is so big. It's also the reason why you might not notice that you're losing space on your drive over time. It's pretty common with live service games where they'll add new cosmetic items or maps that'll have to be downloaded and thus increase the file size. Killing Floor 2 is especially notable for this because when it originally launched, it was a 40 gigabyte title and now requires 95 gigabytes of space. And while a lot of that is attributable to textures, maps, videos, etc., Killing Floor 2 is also a unique case in that, according to my friend and Reddit, the game's file size just increases the more you play because you have to deal with the game for some reason, copying maps downloaded automatically from the workshop into a cache folder and them not being deleted when you unsubscribe from the map on the Steam Workshop. What sucks is that it's getting harder and harder to argue against the insane file sizes of games nowadays, because while it is well and truly absurd, storage is only getting cheaper and cheaper. At a certain point, why shouldn't games like Call of Duty just get bigger and greedier and eat up more and more of your drive's space? PC gaming especially has never exactly been a cheap hobby, so to see 1 terabyte SSDs average a price of about 75 USD means that developers can afford to have their games take up slightly larger file sizes. But the issue with this line of thinking is that games like COD aren't reasonably just taking up slightly larger file sizes. We are talking 199 gigabytes on PC with everything installed. That is 1/5 of a 1 terabyte drive. If we translated this storage into raw dollar value with the idea that a 1 terabyte SSD is on average 75 USD, that's $15 of storage exclusively taken up by COD. Red Dead Redemption 2 only takes up $9 worth of storage. Halo MCC also only takes up $9 worth of storage and is literally 6 games in one. MW3 doesn't need to be this large. The game shouldn't even exist. In a just world, this game was a free to $10 DLC for Modern Warfare 2, and Sledgehammer Games wasn't forced to crunch this game out in 16 months. But the game does exist. And for being bloated at 199 gigabytes because of a desire to chase after the most realistic graphics ever, it really looks at most barely improved to Modern Warfare 2019. You could really go either way with it depending on how much you notice a few higher quality models or textures. Modern Warfare 3 is 40.5 gigabytes larger on my PC than a fully installed Modern Warfare 2019, all for graphical improvements that really don't amount to much, and I feel like arguably equal amounts of content. 40.5 gigabytes is a lot of space. That's the OG Modern Warfare, MW2, and MW3 with 8 gigabytes to spare. It's the entirety of Dying Light or the entirety of Devil May Cry 5. I could sit here and name games for hours, like Dark Souls 3 or Fallout 4, that are less than 40 gigabytes, but I think you get the point. The OG Star Wars Battlefront and Battlefront 2, released back in 2004 and 2005, are a combined total of 7.3 gigabytes. So somehow, this translates to the Classic Collection saying it requires 50 gigabytes of your storage on Steam, which, by the way, is a lie, because it actually requires 62 gigabytes of space on PC. That little discrepancy is more than the entirety of Fallout New Vegas, not counting the mod you'll need to download to actually get it running on your PC. And this is all for games that still look like they came out in 2004 and 2005. How? What are these textures, 4K now? Is all of the audio in the game suddenly uncompressed? I'm almost impressed. How? Actually, how did they manage this? I feel like a lot of the bloat surrounding some larger games speak to a bigger issue with the AAA industry as a whole when it comes to crunch. While it's easy for the average person to look at the file size of a large game like COD and to say they should just compress or optimize it, and you're not wrong to think that, but we need to look at the facts. MW3 was made in 16 months and features a short campaign, multiplayer, zombies, Warzone, you know, the works for a COD game. Activision has no real obligation to force Sledgehammer to optimize the game. It's not like games need to fit on discs or cartridges. And as I mentioned, with the price of storage going down and the sales numbers that Call of Duty is still pulling, Activision also has no financial need to force Sledgehammer to spend time compressing the game anyway. Hell, with how close SSDs are getting to the price of a AAA game, I'm willing to bet there have been actual discussions about cross-promotion between COD and popular SSD brands to sell their games on bundled physical SSDs you can plug into your computer or console. The new Corsair COD SSD, optimized for the best possible performance in-game, with like Price's face on it or some bullshit. If we want any hope for optimization or compression, we can only pray for longer dev cycles, an optional install for high-res textures and audio, or the AAA industry needs to stop being so obsessed with realistic graphics. Games are optimized, just not for you or me. They're optimized for that guy who doesn't actually play the game and instead sits and stares at a wall to compare its texture to a game from last year on a different console in a different genre. How many people in COD are truly going to notice a wall having a 4K texture? I'm willing to bet you could replace half of them with textures 64 by 64 in size, and most players would never notice. It would be a Reddit post, it'd get like 1.9 thousand upvotes, there would be one article on it, and that'd be it. No one would ever mention it again. Forza Horizon 5 is a whole 54 gigabytes more than Forza Horizon 4. So how good does the foliage really need to look in a racing game? Hell, Forza Horizon 3 is only 60 gigabytes, and I'd argue that's the best a racing game really needs to look. On an actual basis, does any game truly need to look better than Red Dead Redemption 2? RDR2 already looks so good that improving graphically on that really seems impossible, and is more about diminishing returns and spending hundreds of millions of dollars than anything else. With the way things are going, games will only get bigger and bigger. Even just 10 years ago, we were posting headlines and losing our minds over games like Titanfall being nearly 50-something gigabytes, which funnily enough ended up being because the game shipped with like 35 gigabytes of uncompressed audio. I haven't even gotten into the people who still happen to live in areas where the internet is notoriously bad, or the only companies available to them only offer speeds tied to data caps. I've lived with no internet, I've lived with bad internet, and I've lived with data caps. And 9 times out of 10, I ended up turning to piracy, not just because I was a broke teenager, largely because I was a broke teenager, but also because pirates ended up doing a better job at compressing games and their downloads than the companies distributing them. Day-long downloads could sometimes turn into a few hours, which became a lot more palatable and allowed me to download and play more games before I got yelled at for hitting our data cap. As it stands now, there's no push for compression, there's no push for download options, and there's definitely no push for these large AAA game developers to look into making a game with a limited scope and without throwing hundreds of millions into resources and dev time into the most realistic looking gun or water physics of all time. If a game like Spider-Man 2 can release, and despite having a slightly rushed development cycle, still end up costing $300 million to develop and go on to sell 10 million copies, thus making it a best-selling PS5 exclusive, steep competition, I know, but Insomniac Games is still forced to lay off employees despite record sales, then something clearly needs to change. It also just so happens that the change would also lead to smaller file sizes. And don't get me wrong, I've criticized the graphics of games before on this channel, but I feel like there's a middle ground between 19 FPS sludge that gives me a headache after an hour of playing it, and breathtaking visuals that crank the fans on my PC and I have to turn DLSS on so the game doesn't stutter. For now though, that middle ground is out of my hands. We're not going to see download options for high-res textures until someone sets the standard, required, we're not going to see longer dev cycles, and we're most certainly not going to see an end to an obsession with realistic graphics. We'll instead continue to see games with scopes beyond what they truly need, with the ever-present chase for the most realistic looking graphics possible to bloat development time, bloat development cost, bloat poor performance, and of course, bloat file sizes. If you like this video, consider subscribing and clicking the end screen to watch another.